What happens when a cruel daimyo is about to be appointed to a high political position by the shogun? Better yet, what happens when that shogun's cabinet of elders see that daimyo as a threat to the peace of the domain? You get this 1963 Iechi Kudo Chanbara starring Chiezo Kataoka and Ryohei Uchida, called 13 Assassins. This film is a part of what is known as Iechi Kudo's Samurai Revolution Trilogy, the other two parts being The Great Killing and 11 Samurai. Today's film is the first chapter in the trilogy. My name is GojiraFerret, and this is 13 Assassins. Let's begin. Yo! 13 Assassins is the first chapter of a trio of revenge stories called the Samurai Revolution Trilogy. It would see its creation and direction by Iechi Kudo, with the screenplay written by Kaneo Ikegami. Cinematography responsibilities would be given to Juhei Suzuki, whose name has been associated with many other Chanbara films such as The Fort of Death starring Tomisaburo Wakayama and Bohachi Bushido, Code of the Forgotten Eight with Tatsuro Tamba. Akira Ifukube would write the musical score for the film. Toei Company would produce and distribute 13 Assassins, which would see a theatrical release on December 7, 1963 in Japan. Nearly 50 years later, 13 Assassins would be remade with director Takashi Miike at the helm. The remake being praised highly for its 45-minute final battle sequence and garnering mostly positive reviews. Our story begins in the 18th century during the decline of the Tokugawa Shogunate, where a sadistic and cruel daimyo, Naritsugu, played by Kentaro Suga, is the half-brother of the shogun. A council elder played by Tatsuro Tamba named Doi Tachitsura is concerned as Naritsugu is to be promoted to a high political position, council elder. Knowing the cruel daimyo would use his position as elder to mold catastrophic policies and bring an end to order in the domain, he calls upon Shinzaemon Shimada, or Shinza. Shinza is played by Bloody Spear at Mount Fuji star Chiezo Kataoka. Shimada arrives, and Doi explains to him that the Council of Elders are concerned by the development. Shinza, confident that the Shogun's Council of Elders has a plan to prevent such a catastrophe, is told by Doi that he is to enlist the best samurai and ronin he can to do the most unspeakable thing ever: assassinate the daimyo. Shinza is convinced by Doi, who explains that he and the other elders are prohibited from killing the daimyo, but that chaos will sweep the nation if Shinza doesn't agree. Understanding it's his duty as a samurai to protect the domain, Shinza agrees to the cause. We are introduced to Ryohei Uchida's character Kito Hanbei, a high-ranking official to the daimyo. Hanbei is berated and humiliated by his lord, who decides to execute an imprisoned family of a defeated rival despite the elders and Hanbei's request. Afterwards, Hanbei is able to see all who visited the Edo mansion and notices names of different individuals meeting together. Smelling blood in the water, Hanbei is able to uncover a plot to kill the daimyo. Meanwhile, Shinza begins enlisting the best samurai and ronin he knows to join his band of assassins. After their meeting, a duo of Hanbei's Akashi clan samurai attempt to interrogate one of the assassins, but are cut down by a ronin named Hirayama Kojiro. The bodies of the two Akashi samurai are found, and Hanbei's suspicions are confirmed. He then confronts Shinza, and they have a meeting. Hanbei lets Shinza know that he's aware of his plan, and that he won't slay him here. Instead, he vows to settle their rivalry in the heat of battle. The two agree on these terms, and Hanbei leaves. During their discussion, the daimyo's procession departs Edo towards Akashi domain. If Naritsugu makes it to his province, the assassination will be impossible. That morning, 12 assassins hide and wait the arrival of Lord Naritsugu's entourage, but quickly notice that Hanbei was prepared, with a body double hidden in the second palanquin. The group argue amongst each other, but eventually agree to retreat and devise another plan, acknowledging Hanbei's wisdom. Days pass, and the group are able to come up with another plan. Aware of the scandal the daimyo was involved in when he visited Kiso, they plan to enlist the support of the garrison leader to prevent Naritsugu's procession from traveling through the Owari province. This would effectively cause the procession to slow down and force them to reroute around the domain, which would put them in another province. Now able to narrow down where the daimyo will be, the assassins head towards Okazaki. Hanbei and his lord arrive at the border of Owari territory and are denied access. Angered, Naritsugu attempts to use his status as means to bully his way through Owari. Unfortunately for the lord, Owari soldiers draw down on the daimyo with their Tanage Shima, causing Hanbei to take the daimyo away in a hasty retreat. Shinza and his band settle into Ochiai and meet a man calling himself a country samurai. After some dialogue, Shinza agrees to let him into the group, making them the 13 Assassins. Week after week passes by, as Naritsugu's convoy has supposedly disappeared from the highway. Shinja is convinced that it's a tactic by his rival Hanbei, and that they are currently holed up somewhere. While the 13 assassins wait for their target, they turn the entire village into a trap in hopes to ensnare the daimyo. The group becomes concerned, and just as they are about to give up, Naritsugu's procession is seen approaching. During a heavily foggy morning, the convoy headed by Hanbei enters the village. Shinza gives the order and the 13 assassins begin their ambush. Hanbei and his men are trapped within the village streets as makeshift gates and barriers were placed beforehand, funneling the Akashi soldiers where the assassins want them. Overwhelmed, Naritsugu's men find an alleyway, and believing it to be an exit, inadvertently drive their lord deeper into the trap. Hanbei desperately chases after the lord, knowing it's all a trap and they must fight their way back to the highway. During a lengthy battle involving spears, arrows, swords, and even falling logs, Naritsugu is separated from Hanbei and runs into the closest dwelling. There, he stands face to face with Shinza, and while crying out for Hanbei to save him, meets his demise at the end of his assassin's blade. Noticing his lord's death, Hanbei calls out Shinza for a duel, and the two square off. Hanbei thrusts his blade into his rival and notices something strange. Shinza didn't try to defend himself. Confused by this, Hanbei is told that it's their destiny as samurai to die for their cause. Just then, a spear is driven deep into Hanbei from behind, and the two lament at their fates. Before his last breath, Hanbei acknowledges Shinza's victory, but vows to see him in the nether. Bleeding out from his wounds, Shinza gives the order to sound the signal to let the assassins know they have won. The conflict ends, and the sole survivor of the Akashi samurai is seen stumbling through a rice field laughing. The narrator ends the movie by stating the assassination was covered up and Naritsugu's death was reported as due to an illness. Let's discuss cinematography. Can't say too much about it, as it's standard, but there are some pretty interesting shots done by Juhei Suzuki, especially the shot where Naritsugu enters the courtyard to execute the family. During the final fight scene, shots were frantic, and it felt like he was instructed to do his best to capture as much action in one frame as possible. Fortunately for him, most of the conflict was done in narrow alleyways, making it simple for Suzuki to frame the multiple actors. When we look at the acting, the two that stand out the most are Kataoka and Suga. Kataoka's character was given a lot of screen time and some of the best dialogue. Suga, though, was given minimal screen time, which I think is odd, considering he's the main target and motivation of the 13 assassins. Suga's scenes are well acted out too, but most of the attention is removed from Suga and given to Shina's rival, played by Uchida. Personally, with a 2-hour runtime, I think they could have given Suga more scenes to establish how much of a bastard his character really is, and make his death more impactful. Action is snail-paced at the very beginning. 13 Assassins may seem like something action-packed with multiple attempts on the daimyo's life, but mostly it's a cat-and-mouse game till the final conflict. Action is frantic throughout the ambush. Lots of movement as samurai swing swords and spears trying to either kill or defend the daimyo. I did notice that a lot of moves were nearly the same, usually consisting of a setup and then a sideways slash across someone's chest or stomach. Not as elaborate as Kill and not as fast as Goyakin. It's serviceable, but after 30 minutes of the same setup and payoff, the action falls a bit short. Now we're getting into dialogue, and it's a bit hit and miss. It does deliver some quotable lines such as Hanbei's dying speech. It isn't very complex as it's comprised of tactics and politics for the most part. It sets up the stakes, and that's what matters the most. The sounds of a shamisen strings being plucked are the first thing you hear at the beginning, and that's what stands out the most. Throughout the film, music is mostly absent, and only seems to happen during powerful scenes such as Shinza confronting Naritsugu. It slowly swells in, but doesn't overpower the scene. Again, that's only when it decides it wants to be there. I'm surprised certain scenes weren't given a sting to let someone know an important character has died, which would have been a bit helpful in some scenes. Where do I stand with 13 Assassins? It's not bad, but not stellar. It's a good film, and hopefully the next 2 chapters are better, as there's much potential. There are a lot of great ideas, and the story, though it's a typical kill the bad guy story, does bring interesting concepts to the table, especially the duel between Shinza and Hanbei, as it becomes more of a discussion of duty over what is morally right or wrong, and the destined death many samurai have to face. I can't wait to watch the next chapters of Iechi's Samurai Revolution Trilogy. And we've made it! That was my review of Iechi's 13 Assassins, and the first review of a trilogy. Be ready for the next chapter, The Great Killing. If you liked today's review, please give it a like and comment down below your thoughts on the film. If you want more and like to stay up to date with Samurai Cinema's content, give the channel a subscribe. This was GojiraFerret, and I thank you all for watching.